Let's turn from national politics to an issue here in New York. The governor has been on a listening tour this week. She is going around to listen to how schools should be dealing with cell phones. Several central New York districts, including West Jenny and Liverpool and Syracuse, they do have rules about keeping phones out of classes. And Luke, you have been on a school board. Who should be making the decisions? Is that up to the teacher? Is that up to the school board? Is that up to the state legislature?
I think it depends how seriously you view this as a problem and how quickly and effectively you want to get something done. Obviously, localities usually want to maintain control over these types of issues, but the reality with school board policies are that they're guidelines. They're not local laws where there's punitive measures if you violate them. So even though school districts have laws prohibiting cell phones in different ways, I know this from my own experience, those aren't uniformly enforced. Right? And so if you look at cell phones as disruptive in the classroom, not a valuable learning tool, something that really needs to be dealt with in an effective fashion, then I think state government is the way to go. Why? Because all school districts pay close attention to state guidelines, because they could lose funding, they can get sued, and that is a quick and easy way to get things done. And I think the governor is clear that she wants to move forward on this. I think this listening tour is just sort of a pretext to make sure that everybody gets heard, and so she's not, when she acts, she's not surprising New Yorkers with what she's going to do.
Anirban, what's your take?
So looking at the facts though, right, like 72% of teachers in US, and Hokul I think is talking about this poll, they believe that cell phones have a terribly detrimental effect on children's learning, concentration, attention span, and so on and so forth. And there are schools that are test cases where they have strictly banned, and they have found excellent results in lack of less bullying, more tuned students, more talking to each other. So I think you know, the other side would be that how do I get in touch with my daughter or son who is in school, and it's my child, I need to get in touch with them. How do I do that? The answer is, how did people do that for the last 300 years? I don't know, right? Like, so maybe one solution would be flip phones. Right, like you only have phones that can send a text and call, and you don't have social media, you don't have internet, you don't have.
But isn't text still going to be a problem? Kids can text, bully each other on text.
I suppose they could, like, right, like, but I think it is a less than social media. Like bullying over text takes a lot of time. Bullying over social media is very easy, I suppose, right? But I don't know. That could be one solution if the PTA, the parents come against it. But you know, on the whole, I agree. In my class, I don't allow any electronics which is unguided. Electronics are great. You can use them as teaching tools, but unguided usage, it is detrimental to learning by most scholars and people who observe this stuff.
Ty, who should make the decision?
Yeah, I really don't know, frankly, because I think that we should make sure that we've done experimentation, that we've looked at school districts that it worked, school districts that don't do it. I mean, my experience is higher ed, and I use computers and demand that they be in my class because that's how I learn, and it's changed the way I teach, it's changed the way I learn. I mean, you don't need the same knowledge if you have Wikipedia there. So I use the computer absolutely. And if you're in a lecture classroom, then if you're not being very interesting, then they're going to be on there doing it on the computer as well. So I think it also shows us that there are ways that we need to do a better job of teaching to engage them. So I always, whenever at West Point particularly, we had no problem with this because we were an obedience-based organization.
But Hamilton's a little different.
Well, Hamilton's different, but I also know that if somebody is using that, I would go up to them and say, you know, I just want to apologize for not making this class more interesting. And I will make sure I endeavor to do that in the future. So I do think that it's like, right now it should be at the local level, but once we have more information, maybe it does go to the state.
Nina, what's your thought about cell phones in schools?
I'm reeling from Ty letting me know now that the reason my students will surf the web is because I'm not a great teacher.
It's not screen addiction.
I just find it's useful when they say that. They're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that. I don't have much to add other than what's already been offered, that we have seen the positive impacts of this in places, especially in Connecticut, who's done it for 2 years, where it's been effective. And also, there's research that shows that too much exposure to the phone is not a good thing. Only thing I'd add in terms of who should decide, parents should have input, because they have concerns about whether they can get in touch with their child during an emergency, and concerns about school safety.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's an interesting larger debate. I mean, 10 years ago, we wouldn't be debating whether parents have a right to contact their kids' cell phones in a school classroom. So I think that's an interesting point that we can engage more deeply. To that issue, some school districts have the ability for students to have their cell phones in their lockers, for instance. So there is some sort of middle ground, so to speak, where people can communicate, but not in the learning space per se.
It would be nice for a teacher to have clear guidance. That's the one thing I think that makes it difficult, is if you don't have clear guidance and you don't have enforceable rules, then it's hard for a teacher. So making it easier for a teacher would be a good thing.
Yeah, from the state level.
From the state level.
Well, we will see what Hochul finds out on her tour, and if the state legislature responds to whatever she thinks is the good idea.